The morning sun had barely risen over New York City when Kelly Ripa stepped into the quiet kitchen, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she could barely feel. The world outside moved with its usual rush, taxis honking, people hurrying to work, but inside, time felt painfully still. Mark had been unwell for weeks, not something dangerous or catastrophic, but something that had shaken him and her more deeply than either expected. It started as exhaustion, a kind of heaviness he kept brushing off with jokes and half smiles. Just tired, he'd said. Just a long day, he'd insisted. But Kelly knew him better than that. She had loved him long enough to recognize when his smile wasn't real. One evening, after taping their show, she found him sitting alone in their living room, the lights off, his head resting in his hands. It wasn't the posture of a man who was simply tired. It was the posture of someone carrying something heavy, too heavy. "Mark?" she whispered. He lifted his head, and the look in his eyes made her chest tighten. He wasn't afraid, not exactly. He just looked defeated. "I don't feel like myself," he admitted quietly, "and I don't know why." Kelly knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "We'll fix this," she said, her voice steady but her heart trembling. Mark nodded, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. Doctors, tests, endless waiting. Each day felt like a storm they had to walk through in slow motion. Some nights, Kelly couldn't sleep, lying awake beside him as he tossed and turned, fighting fatigue he couldn't explain. One night, after a long day of appointments, Kelly finally broke. She stepped into the bathroom, closed the door quietly, and leaned against the cool tile wall. The tears came fast, hot, silent, unstoppable. She pressed her sleeve to her mouth to keep from sobbing out loud. It wasn't fear of losing him. It was the helplessness of watching the strongest person she knew struggle with something invisible. It was loving someone so deeply that their pain felt like her own. Mark found her later, her eyes still damp. "You're scared," he whispered. She tried to deny it, but her voice cracked. "I just hate seeing you like this." Mark cupped her face gently. "I'm going to be okay," he said. "You've always been my strength. Let me borrow some now." And just like that, Kelly fell into his arms, letting herself be held for the first time in weeks. When the diagnosis finally came, stress-induced fatigue, nothing more, Kelly felt her knees buckle with relief. Mark pulled her close, his breath warm against her hair. "I told you I'd be okay," he murmured. But Kelly shook her head through tears. It wasn't the diagnosis, Mark. It was watching you struggle and not knowing how to help. He kissed her forehead. "You helped more than you know." The next week on their show, during an emotional moment, Kelly looked into the camera and spoke from a place of raw honesty. "Sometimes the people who seem the strongest are the ones quietly hurting the most. Check on the ones you love. Don't wait for them to ask." Viewers felt the truth in her trembling voice. That night, Mark posted a photo of Kelly's hand in his. The caption simply read, "Healing isn't just physical, it's emotional, and love is the greatest doctor of all." And in that gentle, quiet way, their storm finally began to clear.